afternoon, good evening. It's The Search. We are doing our episode today. I believe it's episode 15, and it is about what candidates say versus what employers hear. The reason we've done this one is looking at what we've had this week as an organisation and as a team, and we've had a lot of incredibly honest candidates, which we're so happy about. However, we will put a little bit of candor on that, which is what you say as a candidate and actually what somebody as an interviewer hears can sometimes just need a little bit of interpretation or decoding. So I hope you find that today we're going to take you through some of these, and I'm going to have a huge shout out to my colleague Helena, who is doing the best job on Top Tips Tuesday. Please, everybody, have a good listen to those. They are excellent. They take 30 seconds, so much quicker than I'm doing. What I would say is, and just to kind of give you all a little bit of, you're not going to just have to listen to me forever. Spoke to Nikki this week, and hopefully she will be in on a couple of our podcasts moving forward in the very near future, so you don't have to just listen to me, which is great. So let's get into that. So one of the big things I hear as a recruiter is that people want to have a change, yeah, and change sounds great, and is always something that sounds like it's a positive. Often that isn't really entirely what you hear. So in the office, we'll often hear people saying, I've applied for this job because I want a change. And what we do is try to give you a little bit around, think about today's workplace. Certainly, when I started in recruitment, I know this was a while ago, but everybody just had phones and a Rolodex. And now we have all these wonderful IT things that we do. And we are embracing the joys of AI as we speak. So when you say, I'm leaving because I want change, sometimes what an employer will hear is, so what's been going on where you are? And actually, are you embracing that change? And there's an opposite way of saying that as a candidate as well, which is, there's been a lot of changes, and I'm not, I just find that that's why I want to leave. As an employer sitting on the other side, you kind of hear what you hear. I don't cope with change well, and that's something that we know that people want to make sure that you can embrace. So there's a good way of saying change is everywhere. I understand that there is change. The change that's happened recently, I think, is to the benefit of my workplace. But for me, it just signalled a time where I reevaluated what I was wanting and I'd like to move on. So that's always a good thing. One of the other issues that we hear and things we hear is that there are no opportunities to grow in my last company, which is absolutely understandable from that candidate's perspective. And you may have genuinely hit a ceiling, but what employers do like to hear a little bit more is that you know that you've maybe wanting to run before you can walk. So just think about trying to put that in a more positive way, which is, my company has got to a perspective that there is no growth beyond the point that I'm at. I've been at this point for X amount of time. I believe in your organisation. Having had I earned my spurs, that there are other places for me to go, and I think it's amazing how differently those things can land. So it is great. So also, one of the other sort of really big things is you saying that I work best autonomously. which, again, coming back to the wonderful Helena, she's going to do a really great piece on working from home. I've had insight into it, and it looks fabulous. But what they can usually hear, what you're meaning to say is, look, I'm really self motivated, I'm really self directed, I'm somebody who you can tell to get on. But that employer can sometimes hear, I don't enjoy being managed, or I'm not a team player. So how we would probably suggest is you saying, I'm one of those people who can really get on and work on something that you've given me independently. However, I can work well within a team, and it's really important that I like to do my check-ins with management. So that's always it's subtle, but kind of words matter, I think. Um, One of the things we've talked about, if you've listened to our podcasts on Apple and Spotify, certainly we've not done it here on YouTube just yet, is around asking things at the end of interviews. When you're put on the spot and an employer says to you, would you like, have you got any questions? People do like to fill in the time, and a usually common question is things like, what's your sickness policy? And I have to say, as somebody who does a lot of interviewing and can interview, um, when I hear that, my heart sinks, because what you're saying is, I want to know about the total package. I want to understand, for life, how do these things work? What the employer hears is, you're somebody who's always going to have a sickness or an absenteeism problem, and that kind of does make a red flag. So it is quite important, particularly on those red flag things, that you're not coming off as negative. And I'm gonna focus down on a couple of those that, for an employer, can really mean that they see you not in the light that you want to present yourself in. So one of the things that we hear a lot post pandemic, and quite rightly, is, I'm looking for better work life balance. And in the reality, that can be things like, I just want a healthier environment for me and my family. I've been overwhelmed by the challenges in the organisation that I've been in, and particularly for us that are in healthcare, we know many clinicians were completely burnt out by what happened in the pandemic. But an employer, they can actually hear that you're quite resistant to pressure, or they don't like, or that maybe for you, if there's a part where they may have sometimes where their uh, workload isn't predictable, that you won't be flexible. So often make sure that you are quite open and honest about that. Um, One of the things that we always suggest is never ever say, I've had a personality clash with my manager, stroke boss, stroke team. There is, every working relationship, it has its own merits. And we've all been there. Sometimes there's people who just grind your gears. The important thing is to be able to put that in a much more positive light, because you can come off as being the problem, whereas you may well not have been. So the the way if you're speaking badly about your previous organisation or manager, etc., that's not something which in an interview is the place to air that. So what you can say is that, being in the role, I understand that my manager has their role to do. Where I was wanting to go with my role was in this direction, and what that supported and allowed was something slightly different. I totally respect their position. It's that's why I feel this role would be more suitable. So always try and bring it back to, and in this role, my belief is, this is certainly suiting me, my position, my issues, my values in a much more positive light. And things like saying that My last place was maybe unstructured or chaotic. Choose your words carefully. Um, let's be honest, most organisations can have a bit of chaos with the best planning ever. You'd have to be living under a rock in January 2026 not to be thinking about total chaos that can be happening in the world and in your home, etc. Then there's ways of saying, well, it was there was lots of challenges and changes, and I understand that that can be quite unpredictable. And a lot of that is, I'm really adaptable and flexible, and so the volume of change wasn't the issue for me. It was possibly the way that it was handled by others. So I think that that is a positive way of doing that. So how do we kind of get round, so when I sit in an interview and then the person starts to be mysterious, I am absolutely terrible. I'm somebody who's sitting on the employer side who gets quite excited about a mysterious personal reason and then goes in and asks follow-up questions. So please try not to be an international man or woman of mystery and say things like, I left for personal reasons. But for the employer, we can be on the other side thinking, was was it espionage? Is it a red flag? Why aren't you telling us? And genuinely, it can be things like health or family or life was lifing at that point. Be honest. For me, I once left a role because my grandparent, who cared for me as a child, actually was at end of life. It was fantastic for me to be with them, as I am a nurse, to be with them to the end of their life. And so to say I left for personal reasons, I'm more than happy to share that actually I left to go and care for a loved one. It gave me time with them I would never get again. I'm really glad I did it. I didn't leave that organization in a bad position, and that's looked upon favorably rather than I left for personal reasons. So, my whole view is try and be as honest, but clearly structured in how you are um, for your next employer. And my other sort of favorite along those things is the culture. I'm looking for a good culture. So sometimes what I hear is, okay, two things. What was the culture? So I'm going to ask about that. And were you somebody who found being adaptable quite difficult? And what you're trying to say is, listen, I want to feel somewhere where my values and your values are aligned, and I want to feel supported. But certainly, what you don't want is to give the wrong impression to your new employer. So, a good way of maybe saying that is that the culture and the values in the other organization were great and fitted for the time and fitted with who I was at that point. Looking at your values, new employer, these are the points and these are the values that really speak to me, and these are how I think I would use those and utilize those or align to them. So let's make sure nobody gets the wrong end of that stick. And we know that in today's culture, there's lots of restructure and redundancy. Please don't shy away from that. I know the first time I was made redundant, I genuinely took it quite personally, and felt that the organisation, I had been treated appallingly, and everything else was awful. And now, given retrospect and a couple of redundancies later, I realise that restructuring and redundancy is something that happens commonly within organisations. And so to say, you know, sometimes it's just redundancy. You can say, I didn't see it, or I wasn't foreseeing this issue, and then it occurred, and that then I left, and now it's left me open to new opportunities. Try not to sound bitter, even if you really are bitter. Please try not to. And I think for me, the sort of the last thing for me is certainly looking at, you know, the sort of people person. I'm a people person. Um, what an employer hears is, okay, that's great. I hope you're not too peoply, meaning I hope you're not so busy, you know, having sort of excellent relationships with your colleagues and everybody else that you forget to get on with the job. And probably what your meaning is, look, I make really good relationships that are to the benefit of the business. So when you say that, just make sure that you're not coming across as vague or warm or somebody who will spend an hour making a cup of tea, which I know we all know who those are in different organisations, and you know, they'll make 3 cups of tea a day and really do work part time. So I hope that that's been helpful in sort of decoding what to say, what not to say in an interview, and even what, you know, how to, even with the initial conversations that you can have with a recruiter, just be mindful that those little phrases that you feel are quite innocuous, and don't mean anything. Actually, those people hearing them will hear something completely different. As I said, we'll pull all my mad ramblings together, and we'll put these in our show notes. I am sure Helena will do this. We'll do a wonderful TikTok on this in 30 seconds, which will look much, much better. And again, if you have anything that you are interested in, you want us to feature in our forthcoming series, then please do. We love to hear your comments. We really do love to hear them. And if you can leave them below, we'll look forward to hearing to you. So it's goodbye from me till the next time. Bye now.